is part of a week-long celebration of Martin Luther King Jr. I'm happy to say this isn't your last chance also to honor his legacy. The week is closing with a jubilee at the Black Cultural Center tonight. You're all invited. Visit diversity.utah.edu for more details. Okay, the roots of the modern food justice movement are in the civil rights era. It was in 1969 that the Black Panther Party started a free breakfast program for school children in Oakland, California. Today, grassroots food justice movements take shape around regenerative agriculture, supporting local farms and businesses, increasing food accessibility, and using mutual aid networks to reduce hunger. We're lucky to have 4 wonderful people here today that can speak to a variety of efforts around food justice right here in the Salt Lake Valley, as well as at the University of Utah. We'll hear a brief introduction from each of them about their work, and then Allie Foster here on the end, who's a 3rd-year student studying geography and environmental and sustainability studies, will moderate a discussion. We'll have time for audience questions as well. So starting here in the middle, Jessica Collette has been interested in working at the junction of sustainable farming and food justice since spending a few years living in a rural Midwestern community that was both a haven for organic farms and a food insecure region. She has worked in various settings, from a food pantry in northern Wisconsin to a homestead in mid-coast Maine to an educational garden in Moab. But her path eventually led her to Salt Lake City to work with the Green Urban Lunchbox. She has spent time working with most of GOLD's programs, but really found her place within back farms. To Jess's left, Gabrielle James is an urban farmer who utilizes regenerative and biointensive methods to care for land, environment, and people. Hi, welcome. They work towards food justice at the University of Utah as the Edible Campus Gardens program coordinator and a co-organizer of the university's seed library. I should also note Gabrielle was instrumental in making this event happen. I'm so grateful to them for partnership there. Gabrielle is passionate about equitable access to food and nature and is excited by the rich connection that is facilitated through food growing and traditions. When they aren't covered in garden dirt, you can find them in the outdoors, camping, hiking, and paddleboarding, cooking, learning a new hobby, or spending time with their spouse and son. Brooke Waffenden is the owner and head chef of Urban Pioneer Foods and our caterer. We need to thank her enormously for this delicious food. Urban Pioneer started as a food-focused catering company in 2012. Their menus were focused on using locally sourced produce, meat, and eggs with a wide variety of dietary specialties to meet the needs of a wide audience. The food is fresh, made from scratch, and globally inspired, with an emphasis on comfort and well-being. In March 2020, the pandemic hit and changed the daily operations of all of our lives. They transitioned from catering immediately to a prepared meal delivery service. Urban Pioneer Foods opened Urban Pioneer Cafe in this very building in March 2022. We're so glad to have them at the U. And Johanna here is one of the many neighbors of a Salt Lake community fridge. The SLC Community Fridges is a hyper-local network of neighbors who organize, stock, clean, and take from the colorful fridges. Resisting the charity models of the saints and the served, the community fridges strive for collective solidarity, centering the wisdom of those experiencing food insecurity and raising consciousness about the capitalist systems that devise food apartheid zones. Additionally, Johanna is an organizer at Salt Lake Community Mutual Aid, a 100% grassroots, consensus-based, anti-cop, anti-fascist group connecting leftists across the Salt Lake Valley to generate resilience through projects of community care. Out of these projects, Johanna has been most involved with supporting the fridges, unhoused support, and general group facilitation. Let's welcome our 4 speakers. Thank you. All right, and I will hand it off to Allie. You want to have them do their intros, and I'm going to sit down so you don't have to hear my voice anymore.
Awesome. Hello, I'm Allie. I am an intern at the Sustainability Office. I will be moderating today. In terms of starting off, let's start off on my far left. So Brooke, will you please tell us about yourself?
Casual. Just make sure you project for the Zoom out.
Hello, everyone. I'm happy to be here. Glad I got invited to be part of this conversation. I started, Kara already kind of gave you the download, but in 2012, little over 10 years ago, I started my food-focused catering company, Urban Pioneer Foods. I am a single mom to an awesome 15-year-old boy named Nash that is in his first year in high school. And I'm so nervous, sorry. I'm like emotional. Okay, so when I started my company, I also was a vendor at the downtown farmers market, the summer one at Pioneer Park, and I did the Rio Grande winter market. I forged a lot of relationships with local growers, local artisans and vendors, and just naturally started to figure out how I wanted to create my business and my food within those relationships. So I sourced a lot of product. I became known as a farmer, or as a vendor or a business person that small growers could call, and I would buy mass quantity of the end harvest of their products. So the outlast of their basil or winter squash or things that they couldn't, that maybe were subpar, that they couldn't sell to outlets or take to market. So I would take these products and I would put them into, I have a high acid canning degree. So I use that in my retail and also with my farmers market. And I produce jams and fermented products and soups and all kinds of things. I use a lot of organic products just because I feel like it's more sustainable, it's friendlier to the planet. If it gives me a better quality of food, the kind that I like. My food that I make is comfort food with global traditions. I worked on with IRC. I helped launch the Spice Incubator Kitchen. I was the first year and a half. I did a lot of program writing, and Urban Pioneer Foods Commercial Kitchen became the first Spice Incubator Kitchen, which is a program for immigrant food entrepreneurs to train them on how to run a food-based business here in the States. So that was really cool. And I got more and more exposed to global influence. And so that's how my food really became I grew up in a Mormon home that had a very cultural food base here in a rural part of southern Utah. And my food became more of that. So I feel like it's very Utah comfort food with global traditions. Am I over the time?
You're great. If you want to say something else, you're welcome to, or you can pass it up.
So COVID hit, all my caterings disappeared and that life left. So I instantly switched to a prepared meal, fully cooked delivery service. And I did that throughout COVID. My building was sold a year ago to build condos. So I switched. I searched and searched and searched for commercial kitchen space, which is really, really difficult to find in the city, affordable, and it's just not available. And the space downstairs, the cafe space downstairs became available. I applied to it. I got it. Now that's what I've done. Now I'm a cafe and trying to figure out how to source. In the beginning, for the first 6 months, we were getting all of our eggs locally from Horizonte High School. They have a farm. That has slowed down. So, the way I source is is through community building and relationships. And it's not always local and it's not always sustainable or compostable because it's tricky to do business nowadays. But this is how I share a little bit of who I am and love and sustainability. So thank you. Okay.
I'm Johanna. Like Cara said, I am a neighbor of the Sugar House Fridge, which is one of 4 community fridges that the group called Salt Lake Community Fridges has contributed to Salt Lake Valley. And that group has been around for a year, and it was developed at the other organization I'm an organizer for called Salt Lake Community Mutual Aid, which I've been organizing with for 2 years. And I think actually, before I like get more into that, because it's like pretty self-explanatory, it's just fridge. But I think it's really important to contextualize it with what Cara was saying about the Black Panther Party's free breakfast program, and making sure that we don't forget to highlight some of the most essential takeaways from that, which was that as the Black Panther Party, which was a communist Black working class organization during the civil rights era, if you don't know, but now I know, as they rose with power, so did their suppression. And movements like the Black Panther Party were actually like very effectively improving the conditions of the working class and Black people. The thing that made them successful was the fact that they were one with the community that they were serving themselves, and they had a very sharp and accurate analysis of the root of the issues of what was causing the things, that their community was dealing with. And today, the narrative, when you think about political, like politics, you think of like someone like far away, like writing a bill who you don't know at all. And there's a narrative that we need more good professionals, and we need more nonprofits, and we just need more college educated people who know what they're doing in nonprofits. And I think it's important to remember that the Black Panther Party, for the most part, they weren't college educated. And they didn't have fancy degrees or any of those qualifications that food justice has transformed itself into today, which is understandable. We've been led astray. It's like not our fault. But this is why we have to actively heal, by actively remembering our history and legacy. What made them successful as organizers was that they didn't see food justice as an isolated issue like it is seen today. It was actually one of their many issues. They actually had a 10-point program of many things that they wanted to see change. Because what they were trying to change was capitalism, the systems of capitalism. They didn't consider food justice as mutual aid, even though that's how we and my organization posed it. But in the history, they didn't consider it acts of love. They actually called it survival programs, by which they meant surviving capitalism in preparation for revolution against capitalism to change the systemic issues. So that's all I say, that the free breakfast program, that food justice wasn't their goal. Their goal was to be able to govern themselves, because they could understand that the systems at play were not serving them, working class people. And so that ties back to the community fridges, because it's in direct opposition to the charity model, which is getting approved by the current system, which is what a lot of nonprofits do, which in turn validates that the system is working, and that's okay, because it's hard to resist that. So that's why, we're only just 4 fridges. We're just a generative experiment trying to revive those elements that I just described that we have lost from the Black Panther Party's legacy. And so, for example, to be more specific, those values turn into how the fridges are hosted outdoors, accessible at any time without any prerequisites or any strings attached, so that people who fall through the cracks of the system, which isn't designed to help them, such as like unhoused people, undocumented people, people who have been labeled as criminal or something that doesn't deserve to be given food. It's hyper local, totally grassroots, totally funded by individuals. It's run by and for the people. We try to make sure that the people who are experiencing food insecurity themselves are actually in organizing it. And community fridges and mutual aid, that it wasn't our genius. It's actually a nationwide movement that has gained popularity. in the past 2 years during the 2020 uprisings in response to police brutality and with the rising popularity of anti-capitalism, these things, it is very nice to just give your food to your neighbor, and that is an okay place to sit of your understanding of it, but these things are all connected. So yeah.
I'm Jess. I work for the Green Urban Lunchbox. We're a Salt Lake City-based nonprofit, focusing on empowering people to connect to their food and community. So we have a variety of programs. One is called Fruit Share. We partner with people who have fruit trees on their property to harvest and redistribute that fruit that would otherwise go to waste. We have a farmer training program that focuses on small scale organic and regenerative practices. We have free farm stands that we host at the local senior centers. And then the program that I work in is called Back Farms, where we educate volunteers in organic gardening while growing food for disadvantaged senior citizens. So I'll talk a little bit more about Back Farms specifically. So we connect our volunteer garden apprentices with the seniors to build, cultivate, and maintain these gardens in their backyards. The goal is to provide a hands-on educational experience, social interaction, and free food resources to all participants. So we work with the senior population in particular because they are often an overlooked group when it comes to food resources. They found that hunger rates among seniors 60 and older has actually increased by 40% since 2001. And at the same time, it's difficult for them to access things like SNAP benefits and stuff like that, even if they are eligible, just due to like technology barriers, mobility barriers, and social stigma. So even if they do qualify, it's often difficult for them to access that. And then another issue that a lot of seniors face these days is isolation, social isolation. The CDC has found that 1 in 4 elderly Americans are considered socially isolated. And that can have effects on their health as well. In addition to like not accessing food, all of those things can lead to like lower rates of healing, increased depression, anxiety, stress, and other health effects. So that's why we work with the senior population in particular. And so we have 44 gardens all throughout the county, located in these backyards, and each one is paired with the volunteer garden apprentice who comes out all season to learn all of the different aspects, to interact with their senior, and to take home some of the food. So in exchange for working in the garden, they learn those new gardening skills, and with the hope that they'll feel confident to start their own garden the following season, or if they don't have the space, to continue to like build on their skills in seasons afterward. And additionally for that food resource. So garden apprentices can be anyone from someone who's never planted seed to someone who's experienced at gardening and just wants either the space or to lend a hand and give back to their community, or if they just need that food resource or want that food resource. So in the program, the seniors who live there get 1/3 of the harvest. The garden apprentices take home 1/3 of the harvest, and then all of the excess is distributed at Salt Lake County Senior Centers. We host pop-up free markets. So none of it's ever sold. It's all just given away in this program. And there's no cost to join it on either end, other than the like time cost of volunteers to dedicate 1 to 2 hours per week. And I think one of the most unique parts of Back Farms, and my favorite part, is the creation of those intergenerational friendships and social interactions. I think like we kept the program going. It's been going on for about 10 years now, and has grown like quite a bit. It was like 1 garden the first year, then 2, then 3, and now 44. But we kept it going all throughout 2020, where most people were at home. And I remember like going to see seniors, and they were like, "You're the only person I've seen all week." Well, we maintained like safe distance in the backyard, and like that was really meaningful for them. And that was when like that aspect of the program was really driven home for me. So that's my favorite part. There's a lot of like wisdom to share between like our apprentices, who are often like much younger, and our senior participants. So that's really, really great. And I love that part. And I think that's mostly. All right.
I'm Gabrielle James. I am the program coordinator for the Edible Campus Gardens on this campus. And this program has a long history that is way before me. It started in 1996 down at the Still Center, and I just kind of gauge, do folks know where that is? Do folks know about the Edible Campus Gardens? Give me like thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs down. Okay, all right, some of you do, some of you don't, so I'm gonna just go over the history real quick. So it started in 1996 at the Still Center as it was a lab space for an organic gardening class. And it functioned that way until 2002, when the gardens expanded down by the Chem building and the law building and the Pioneer Theater and down in that lower campus space. Have y'all seen that space? Yeah, okay. Some of you kind of know. Awesome. So it expanded in 2002, and at that point, they moved the lab space down there and then kept the garden at Still. And the rest of the space was transformed into sort of a community garden. And it was run by students for several years until it got big enough that they were able to hire a staff member. And that person was in charge of running the gardens, making sure everything was integrated and running smoothly and taking care of the resources on campus well and all of those things. And they sold the produce for several years on campus at the farmers market. I think they also did some pop-up markets and things like that. And then in 2020, a bunch of students came together, all of the student leaders for the gardens, and did some vision building and decided that they wanted all of the produce from the gardens to be going to the campus community for free, which is something that I was not here for, but I'm very proud of those students about, and something that I think is really important to the history of this program, and also an important thing to note so that students know how much power you have to make really cool, good change on campus. And so since 2020, that's what we've done with the program. We donate almost all of our produce to the Feed You Pantry, and we work really closely with them, and then they distribute everything for us. Y'all know where the Feed You Pantry is? Do you know about it? It's open to everybody on campus, anybody that's part of the campus community. It's in the basement of the Union. There's also one up in the health sciences campus. Does anybody know where that building is? What building that is? No? Okay, you could find it on their website. And so that's where the majority of our produce goes. And then we also take some to the farmers market that happens in fall that Kara organizes through the sustainability office. We take that and we do free drop-offs. People can come get whatever they want at that farmers market. And we do that as long as there aren't any produce vendors at the market. If somebody in future comes and wants to sell their produce at the market, I'm not going to do the produce pickups there because I don't want to compete with those folks. But we are always going to prioritize getting food to our community for free. So mostly through the Feed You Pantry, through the farmers market, and then we also do occasional drop-offs and pickups, as well as if folks want to come volunteer with us and you come and you're there for a harvest, we'll share our produce with you there as well. So that's the biggest focus of our program, I think, is getting food to students, because students are also a particularly vulnerable population when it comes to food insecurity. I think pre-pandemic numbers were 1 in 3 students were facing food insecurity. I haven't seen the number since, but that's a lot of students. And pre-pandemic, also students were not able to access SNAP benefits. Also, sometimes people call it food stamps, government support for food. So pre-pandemic, they couldn't access that unless there was a specific qualifying factor that they had. That has changed since the pandemic, but there's still a lot of food insecurity on campuses. And I don't know, I mean, everybody's heard like the whole students are eating ramen for their whole time on campus, right? So we want to make sure that students can get some produce in their bodies and have it for free and low barrier access. And that's what we're working on. We also bring classes in as part of the class, or we bring volunteers in as well in individual volunteering sessions. So we're also working to teach people how to grow food. And that's a big part of what we do as well, and serve that campus as a living lab. Promise that the sustainability office has as well. And then with the seed library that was organized in 2020 by the person who had my position before me, and 2 people from health sciences. 1 person is a librarian up there, 1 person is faculty for nursing. And I've picked it up since the last person left and I started, and the 3 of us worked to just get seeds out to folks, and we're working on organizing some educational events to teach people how to grow. And the purpose of that is just to get seeds out to people. And we know that not everybody has land, so we're also working on figuring out how we can teach people how to grow in their windowsill or on a balcony if they have it, or whatever access folks have to be able to grow even something small like parsley and just have something in their house. So that's the purpose of the seed library as well. That's what I do.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, so now we will start with the questions. How I thought it was best to do this is I will ask questions. If you want to be the first to answer the question, you can like give like a little wave to me and I'll call on you. Otherwise, we'll just either go down the line or I'll try to choose who I believe should answer the question first. And then I will open it up to the audience, like in between a certain amount of questions. Because I know it's sometimes hard to like keep your questions until the very end and remember them. So I'll try to include you guys also the best I can. And the people on Zoom too can always either raise their hand or type it in the chat, and we have people watching it on Zoom. Okay, so the first question we have is, what does food justice mean to you and how would you define it? Would anyone like to go first to answer that question? If not, awesome. Okay, cool. Thank you, Gabrielle.
Yeah, happy to do it. So food justice, it means a lot of things to me. I think it's a really complex movement, trying to meet a lot of different needs. But if I can boil it down, I would boil it down to say it's equitable access to an adequate amount of culturally appropriate, healthy, fresh, and safe food. And there's a lot of things that go into pretty much every word of that statement, but I'm going to address just two so that other folks have time to speak. The first one I want to address is equitable access. As you said, this is an intersectional issue, and there's a lot that goes into food justice. And we need to recognize that our marginalized populations and peoples are experiencing this at disproportionate levels, and we have to address that. And that's across race and gender and income status. And so we need to approach food justice from that perspective. And then I also want to address the word safe in that. Safe for me plays into the word fresh, where we're giving people food that is good for their bodies. It's not expired, it's not old. We're not giving whatever leftovers are left behind, our old outdated cans or whatever. But making sure people get access to good food regardless of income. And also that it's safe for the people growing the food, because farm workers across the country and globally experience really unsafe and scary conditions. And so making sure we're addressing that in food justice is important. And also making sure we're addressing safety for the land and future generations. So that's what food justice means to me.
Awesome, that's good. All right, let's take it over to, let's just go straight to, Jess.
Yeah, I think Gabrielle did a really good job of encompassing a lot of the aspects of food justice. Pretty much mirrored what all my notes said. But yeah, I think it is important to think about the aspects other than like just the access to that food, to think about like land ownership, who has access to land to grow it, how people are growing it, like which practices they're using and what that does to the safety of the communities around them and the workers like actually working to grow the food and distribute the food, and all like it encompasses everything from like the moment the land is like cultivated to when it gets on someone's plate. So yeah, thinking about all of those aspects is really important and thinking about a food justice movement. It's not just access to food, growing of food, or any one thing, it's all of it.
Yeah, I agree. You guys encapsulated it well. I don't know, by the time we get to
I
anything else. It's great. No, I guess one thing I thought was important to add is the whole thought of how, like, in our nation, especially, there is an abundance of food, as is there an abundance of housing. So the solution is never, or the one solution isn't necessarily to like build more houses or just like grow more food. It's like it's that's what our group focuses on, is that like, because there's an abundance of food but starving people in our nation, then it's clearly a systemic issue of like have and have not. Yeah.
I agree with all of all statements. And that it is a huge picture, you know. I think often of you know, the workers, and when I make my choices of purchasing food, I try to keep those kinds of things in mind and what is the effect of a, 45-cent can of peas, like what, how is it possible that we have that, and pallets and pallets and pallets of food that looks so perfect, like I think about that a lot when I'm making my choices of how I buy and who I buy from. And the vendors that, like, for example, I purchased my coffee from Rimini Coffee Company. It's a local company. They have incredible coffee. It tastes delicious, but one of the reasons I choose to go with them is because of their sustainability, their support. They're small. They've been here for a very long time, 40 years, it's a family-based business. They're better for the environment with the practices that they're doing. So I think about that kind of stuff, bigger picture, I guess, of food justice. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, there's so many different ways that you can describe food justice, especially based on where you live and the community that surrounds you. So the title of this event is Expressing Love Through Food and is connected to MLK's vision of building a beloved community. This question I'm gonna ask if Jess, you could start it off, as I'm sure your organization brightens the day of many seniors who give their unutilized land. So what brought you to work in the food systems? And do you relate your work to building community or growing love? And how?
So for the first part, I was inspired to work in food systems when I lived in northern Wisconsin. It was a really rural community and there were a lot of both small organic farms and then also like large scale industrial farms. And I was working at a food pantry there. And I was just like, there's no connection between all of the food being grown here and like all the food being distributed here. I don't know why these things both exist next to each other when there's all this food being produced and then all these people not accessing food. So I was just like, that was my first time even really thinking about that, admittedly. And then at that point, I also was like, I kind of want to be a farmer. How can I do both? So that's what brought me to the Green Urban Lunchbox eventually, to like work on connecting food being grown directly with people who need it, but also being able to grow the food. And then, yeah, I think in back farms, we really do seek to like build community where it doesn't exist. So most of our volunteers and our senior participants would otherwise not meet likely. There aren't like a lot of avenues for people to meet when they have like different interests or ages or things like that outside of like organized religion. So I think it provides the space for them to meet over a common task or goal or skill, which is seeing the success of the garden or just enjoying the beauty of the garden. And it does just create like a really nice space for people to share stories and create friendships and create that community where otherwise wouldn't exist.
Awesome. I'm gonna ask if Johanna, you can talk now about your fridge and how you guys connect to the community.
Yeah, well, so I guess just, it all, like the Salt Lake Community Mutual Aid Organization started during the COVID-19 pandemic. Because that, of course, we all experienced exacerbated issues of access to financial stability, and then highlighted how that has actually always been there and is continuing to exist. The fridges exist. The only way that they can exist is dependence on community. So it's not only dependence on people to give food to the fridge, but also everybody to take and then create that connection with the fridge and feel where the feet where you're standing is your neighborhood, and that fridge that you're physically near is really there, and that builds community interdependence, which is a radical act when it can disrupt our dependence on mass food production practices like you were talking about, And in that way, we like can become more connected to each other and, like, yeah, ourselves and, yeah, support ourselves.
Awesome, awesome. And then Gabrielle, I've seen how your work can grow love in our campus for sure. Either if it's through the edible campus gardens volunteering for the farmers market, seeing all the positive reactions of the students being able to get free produce. But how can you relate your work to building a community and growing love? And what brought you into the piece?
Yeah, for me, my work is entirely centered on community and togetherness and love. I have some personal connections where I grew up food insecure and know what that feels like and how scary that is and just how that impacts every part of life. And I just, that just kind of marinated for my whole upbringing, right? But I didn't know I wanted to work in food systems until I was like halfway through my degree, honestly. I came here I studied here, I didn't mention that before, I'm a U alum. But I came to the U for a different program, and went through that for about a year, decided that wasn't right for me. And then I spent some time getting my generals done, looking around, seeing what was around. And ultimately I got my degree in sociology with an emphasis in food justice, not an official emphasis, but all of my electives and everything were focused on that, and internships and whatnot. And then I got a minor in Parks, Rec, and Tourism with an emphasis in outdoor education. And as those things were coming together, I was just thinking really critically of like, I'm loving what I'm studying and I love community. How can I have a job based on this? And to finish my degree, I did an internship with the Green Urban Lunchbox, and loved what they were doing and wound up doing their long-term farmer training program. And then I worked with them for a season and found this job in the meantime and was so excited to come and do that same work, but for our campus community, for this place and these people that I love so much, and care so deeply about. And so I feel like everything is centered on that, because farming is a joy and it's beautiful to have that connection over space, right? And wonderful to see things grow and have that connection to land, but it is hard work. It's really hard work. And there are days that, earlier this season, we had a day that we were farming that was 107 degrees and it was miserable. And so to manage being out there and find the ways to find shade and keep cool and be okay in those really hard days, I think what drives that is knowing that we're getting food out to people that need it and that will love it and that it matters so deeply to. So it's really all about that for me. And something that's really wonderful about my position here at the U is that I also get to work with those classes, right? And I get to bring in volunteers from all over campus and work with all these different folks from all kinds of paths, right? Like I have medical students and I have ENVST students and I have writing students and folks from all over. And seeing that connection and the way people bond is really beautiful, like Jess said. And that's really cool. And it's also cool to see people see things for the first time because we're really disconnected from our food system and how food grows, and that's not our fault. But I think it's important to reconnect when and where we can. So I love that too. For example, I had over last semester, I think I had about 400 students between volunteers and classes and whatnot come in through the whole semester. And so many of those folks, like a massive majority of them, had never seen tomatillos before. Had maybe had salsa verde, right? But had never seen how they grow, let alone knew that that's what went into salsa verde. And so getting to make those kinds of connections are really cool, as well as just knowing that hard work, the literal sweat is going to feed people here. So.
Awesome. And Brooke, I know that eating good food brings people together as it has with my family growing up. So what brought you into the food system and how do you relate your work to building community and growing?
I have been in the only thing I've ever done. Started building pizza boxes when I was 10 and a busser when I was 13 and 14. I've only worked with food. I've never even tried doing anything else. Well, I did work for IRC and I had to be part of that in a cubicle and almost like, yeah, I was like, okay, can't do this. So I've always naturally worked in food. It's how I show my love. It's how I make connection. Is through my food. So I started my business as a business to support my family and do my thing. And it just naturally evolved to, I started becoming a caterer for many, many nonprofits. I worked with Road Home, Tracy Aviary, Wasatch Gardens. I was a chef for the Inclusion Center's adult camps for 7 years. And I worked with some of the leaders in that organization to start programming for food justice. And I did, it changed the outlook of who I am, being exposed to a lot of these people. I did a lot of discounted or free catering to support the organizations that have more power than I do as a single business. So it's not really, I wake up every day because I need to make a paycheck to put a roof over my kid and but I also largely think about that. Yeah, it's the way I share love, and I love food and the concept that things grow and stuff should be, treated beautifully and shared. So, yeah.
I know that you have to leave in about 10 minutes,
Mhm.
so I'm gonna.
I have to go cook.
I'm
I'm sorry.
gonna hop to a question where I would like you to answer it first.
Okay.
Traditionally, anti-hunger problems have consisted of things like canned food drives and donations to food banks. So how does your work differ from that model in terms of what you did over the pandemic?
Oh, okay. So my business model that I went into when the pandemic hit, I already had a version of it I had a little retail store, which was really what I wanted to do and not be a caterer. But I could never really figure out how to do both things because you have to hire people and I never had any money to do that. So I did it all on my own. So I had this really small fridge that had prepared fully cooked meals that people came in and bought. My businesses have always been able to, my business has grown because I educate. I have to have a lot of education for people. People don't understand. They think that a 16-ounce bowl of fresh soup at $7 with 2 big local pieces of bread is expensive. When you're comparing it, to maybe Zupas or, places that their soup is coming in a bag made in a factory, So there's a lot of education I have to do with my customers base. The meal delivery was just, we were in it was a perfect situation, a perfect storm for me. I already had it Intel. I had all of the equipment I needed for it. I already had a customer base that would take it because they couldn't go anywhere, it was so perfect. And then I lost my kitchen. But you reinvent yourself and you figure other things out. Am I even answering the question? I'm sorry.
No, yeah.
But anyway, my business is not a nonprofit. I don't wake up every day and think, how am I going to incorporate food justice or I try to not advertise my food, especially in my cafe, as organic and local and sustainable. I feel for me, it creates a disconnect. There is a huge separation. People, as soon as they hear the word or see it, becomes a catchphrase for what you want to put a price tag on. It also separates people economically or from whatever they're doing. So I try to tell people that it's made from scratch. It's comfort food. We have touched this food. It is coming in raw and we are breaking it down and producing something beautiful. I think it creates better connection between my customer base. And I think people respect that. It'll see it as ultimately I am here to make money, but it's also just what I do. I can't do anything else. So, and people always need to eat, right? Okay. That was the answer. Wait,
Johanna, you talked about the MLK Black Panther free breakfast program in your introduction. So I'd like to bring the question over to you now. How does your work differ from the model of traditional anti-hunger programs?
Yeah, I think I might have touched on this a little bit already. Basically trying to resist the model of the charity, which is hard because that's the only thing that we know today. So things that go into that, are like making sure that there are no strings attached, like from us, like where we source our like money and food, like, and that there's no strings attached to for people who eat food, because traditionally, like there are like deservingness forms, and like, yeah, like bureaucracy, and like you have to like wait to like however long to like be able to qualify to eat food. So like in short, the main difference is that we see food as a human right, and we see the abundance, and we know how to share, and we are trying to raise the consciousness amongst ourselves who are participating to like try to unlearn any shame you've learned to towards like unhoused people or people with food insecurity who just like need their human rights, you know, because there is that that we have learned because food and people have been commodified, and food and people, like everyone's saying, it's from the land, it's from each other. We need to decontextualize it from the system. Sorry, but yeah, going back to the question of how it differentiates from food banks. I had a thought. Oh, I guess just like one more thing to say about food banks is that we cannot replace them, because we're not trying to compete with them. And I'm not saying that like nonprofits and food banks are evil. I'm just saying that they are complacent with the system. So in that way, we're different, where we are also trying to work within food justice, but like I've been saying, like trying to focus on the root of the problem.
And then, let's get a breath. How does your work differ from the model? Oh. Yes.
Jess, I already rambled. I didn't even answer that question.
Yeah.
I think it differs in that we try to like reduce the number of steps in between where the food is grown and harvested and when it gets to the person that it's going to. So our food directly is harvested from the garden, and at that garden, either the volunteer takes it home or the senior who lives there takes it inside their house. And then the rest of the food we bring that week to a pop-up farmer's market. So there's no like taking it to the food bank where it has to be like inventoried and sorted. And over the course of that time, often like perishable goods, you know, go bad. So we try to just like get things out as quickly as possible and as directly as possible. That way they're fresher, tastier and more nutritious. And then just removing those steps just makes it a smoother process and a more connected process. As I'm at these like pop-up markets, like handing food to people or they're picking it out. They're like, where is this from? And I was like, oh, this is from Mary's garden, harvested 2 days ago. It's just a mile from here. It creates like a cool connection to it, and yeah, it maintains that.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, for me, it's pretty similar to what Jess just said, where I am taking mine directly to a pantry. It's on campus pantry, but also working to reduce those steps, right? Like I harvest it in the morning down in lower campus or at Sill, and from at Sill, I walk 200 feet or whatever to take it over to the pantry. If I'm on lower campus, I walk, I don't know, it takes me like 10 minutes uphill because I'm carrying something heavy, so not very far. And it's getting distributed to people same day. So I think that's something that's a little bit different about it. And then Also, again, that piece of teaching people to grow and empowering people to grow on their own, in whatever capacity they can. That way, that's, even, like I said, if it's a small little one plant of cilantro in their house, that's something fresh that has nutrients, right, and is harnessing that sunlight. So I think that's something special about what this program does as well. But yeah, I mean, mostly what you said.
Carol, when is this?
We've got a little time. I would say at least one more question, and then we want to see if we've got any audience questions for sure.
Okay, great. Then I'm gonna jump to the question I'm most interested in. I'm interested in two, but one I'm really interested in is I would like to know what those of us in this room can do to work towards more equitable food systems and what we can do to make a difference within our community. Let's start with Jess.
I think it's really figuring out where, like, what part you want to work in and like work towards, because there's so many different aspects to like creating equitable food systems, like we talked about. It's not just working in a nonprofit or working for like government programs or growing food. It's like everyone's good at different things and likes doing different things. And so finding your role in that is kind of where I would say to start. Not everyone likes gardening because it's not that fun if you don't like it. Not everyone likes like filling out paperwork. So there's all sorts of different roles. And finding what role you would enjoy and are good at is probably what you would want to do. That's kind of vague. I'm sorry.
No, that's awesome. Gabrielle.
Absolutely. Yeah, I want to echo what Jess said. This is a big issue and a big movement. And so we need a diversity of approaches and a diversity of folks working towards this. So definitely finding what works for you and what you're passionate about and how you can fit into that. And also, y'all are all on campus, come work in the gardens with me, right? Like, anybody can come volunteer with us. If you're a student, come volunteer. If you're a TA, encourage the professor that you work with to bring the class to the gardens. If you're a faculty member, please bring your classes to the gardens. You can email me, we can set that up. And that's a good way to do it. I think if you're a staff member, we can organize a group of staff or however that needs to look. I think getting your bodies in the garden, if you want to come join me, we'd love to have you. So yeah.
We also need volunteers. County garden, or if you want to volunteer at a senior pop-up market and just meet your senior community, there's lots of opportunities.
I want to say on that note, I will give you food if I can, right? If we're doing a harvest, I'll have food and I will share it with you if you're volunteering with me. Green Urban Lunchbox almost always will have a lot of food for you. If you do fruit share with them, you'll go harvest apples and you will have more apples than you know what to do.
100 pounds of apples
If you want. So it's a good way to get some food out of it too.
What about you, Johanna?
Did you want to go first? Because you had the.
It's okay. Okay.
Okay.
Hear what you have to say.
Okay. I wrote it down. Okay. So I think, something that's really important is to, like, as individuals, each raise our consciousness about systemic reasons, but I keep repeating the same thing. I'm sorry. And I have just like some recommended readings for that. Mutual Aid by Dean Spade is like a really easy read to get started to learn about these kinds of concepts. Angela Davis, Asada Shakur, and our authors that are really important, and an article called Malcolm X did not dish out free bean pies. Is a really good article that and that can just like say things way better than I can. And then like after like reading and educating yourself, I think it's really important to start by evaluating and like introspecting about yourself and evaluate your privileges. And if you're currently experiencing food insecurity, then you should know that you have power in that, in like who you are and people who are like you. And it's important to find people who are like you because you know what you want or what you need, the reasons why you don't have it. And collectively, if you meet and organized, then you know, you will be able to find ways to get it. And if you are not experiencing food insecurity, then that like requires a lot of modesty and introspection to think about like how financially stable are you, and in what ways do you benefit from systems in like intersectional ways. And a good place to start would be like considering how like your financial stability and where you can donate your money to uplift people who may not be as fortunate.
Great. Is there anything you'd like to add?
I would say go to your farmers markets, meet your farmers, talk to your vendors. You can learn a lot. There's also, you know, look into like what local restaurants are supporting small growers. There's tons. I mean, there's so many restaurants that are getting lots and lots of things, local mushrooms, you know, just like supporting each other and so that's what I would say. Find those businesses, go to your farmer's market. Because it doesn't turn out to be as expensive as you might think it does. And there's just a lot of food, little food out there. Like,
Go to the farmer's market, you. Yeah. Of
Yeah,
course.
also share all your knowledge on this with the people around you, right? And be an advocate, whether that be to the people you know and your friends and family or classmates or colleagues or whomever, or to leadership or up on the hill or whatever that needs to look like also is important. So, yeah.
Cool. So with at least some of the time that we have left, we'd like to open it up to questions from the audience. Yeah. Awesome.
I like your favorite question,
Thank you.
because I find myself, I am, a capitalist inundated person. And so okay, so throw money at it. So, and you all answered this question. So my question is about the community or the campus gardens. Several questions, but I have a class, I'm a professor here. I have a class, and as soon as you said bring your class, I'm like, oh yeah, we're going. But so what do gardeners do? So in the winter,
Mhm,
so like April,
mhm,
when I'm not gonna be cold,
uh-huh,
and we can, what would we do
uh-huh.
this semester?
Oh, such a good question. So I'm gonna address the gardens as a whole for a second, and then I'll get to the classes, okay? I'll be as fast as I can. The garden program itself runs roughly March to like end of October-ish. I cannot give you an exact date for when volunteer hours are gonna open or anything like that, because I don't control the weather, right? So roughly spring break to like just before Thanksgiving break. That's when we're active in doing things. Some folks are able to grow in winter. I'm not doing that right now. I don't have the capacity at the moment. Throwing money at that problem would be a good thing. I would love that, and maybe we could grow in winter, right? So there's a place for that too, right? But as far as winter, for me in my position, what that looks like is I'm doing a lot of planning and preparation. So at the end of fall semester, once I wrapped up the gardens, I did some wrap up with my student staff and attempted to get some data collection going from faculty that brought their classes in and from folks that were accessing our food, just to get some good feedback to help me shape the program for the next year. So that's something I worked on. And then I also just finished doing the garden plan for next year. And that took me some time to figure out what I wanted to grow and prioritizing mostly things that can be eaten raw, because I got feedback that there are a lot of students that don't have access to kitchens, right? And so managing that kind of stuff and figuring out, like, I'm gonna have over 100 distinct varieties of things in the garden. So that took some of my time. And then I started doing outreach, and now I'm working on some education content for my stewards as I train them, because I don't expect the stewards to come into this position with any knowledge of how to garden or farm. It's a training position. So I'm working on that. So that's what my winter looks like. I'm also happy to come and present in a class in the winter, and that's great. I have a few of those scheduled where One of them is an environmental policy course where I'm going to come in and talk about biodiversity and policy as it affects agriculture and things like that. So that's one way we can collaborate. But as far as coming into the gardens, there's lots of stuff to do. Like I said, we start in March, but if you're a person that gets cold, I'd say let's wait till April. And we can be flexible with dates, right? We could book a few and then, go on the one that doesn't have rain or figure that out. You're gonna get dirty and your students are gonna get dirty. I'll have gloves there. I have some hats. I've got sunscreen. We've got water and all of those things. You're gonna get dirty, right? But I think in the beginning of the season, we'll be doing a lot of prepping the garden beds and some weeding. In April, we'll be starting planting, and that would be a great thing to do, which is really fun. Over summer, for summer courses, that's the best time for gardening, which makes it tricky for this program, right? So if you have summer courses, bring them in and we can do all kinds of things from trellising to harvesting to continuing to plant, pruning, things like that, like pruning the tomatoes and whatnot. And in fall, we can continue those things, harvesting, and the end of fall, we can do things like wrapping up the garden beds. So there are options all season long. So I'll give you my card. Please email me.
Do you have any questions on this?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
This was from Vicky. Is Salt Lake City trying to address the importance of recycling in food supply in order to increase and regenerate the ecology and the natural cycle?
Yes. I don't know if somebody else wants to speak on that.
I think there's a pilot composting program going on.
There's a lot of things going on.
Okay, you have more information than I do.
No, there's the Momentum anaerobic digester, which takes food waste and breaks it down in a way that's a little different than composting, turns into natural gas, and then they sell the natural gas to power things in a slightly greener way. There are lots of composting programs. If you're on campus, I am restarting our composting program for the first time since pandemic happened. That will happen in the end of spring or beginning of summer, so you can bring food down that way. But Salt Lake as a whole has lots of options. There are also some groups. What is your group called?
Wasteless Solutions.
Thank you. I was losing it, but do you want to talk about them for just a sec?
Sure.
Sorry, I just
No, it's okay. So my name's Archie. I'm a sophomore at the U. I just came to watch all of them, but I work with a nonprofit in Salt Lake City. They started like 5 years ago, but they're called Wasteless Solutions. And basically their whole purpose is to divert food that's going to be wasted. So they're completely volunteer run. And what they do is they go to different restaurants and catering companies and events and basically pick up any food that's going to go wasted or from like farmers even. And basically through like an app and a bunch of volunteers distribute it to like schools and pantries and shelters and stuff. They're really cool. And they also started a prepared meal program because a lot of times they get like a bunch of bananas or a bunch of like cabbage and they just like, you can't give that to a shelter and have them do something with it because there's nothing really you can do. So they started like a prepared meal program that you can volunteer with and help cook food for people from everything that they get. But they're a really awesome program.
there. So there's them. There's also the Food Justice Coalition that does a similar thing where they're getting prepared meals to people for free and trying to divert waste where they can. There's a group that does like grocery recovery, is that the right term for it? Where they go to grocery store, they do a similar thing to that group, but they work just exclusively in grocery stores and get that food to folks. So yes, there's a lot of stuff happening, but there could always be more efforts, right? So
I would also like to add to that. I don't know if you are all aware, if you live in Salt Lake County, your yard waste bin can take your vegetable scraps and your eggshells. And so you can be collecting that at home and putting that into your yard waste bin instead of your landfill bin. And that works toward the same kind of question that Vicky was asking in the chat in terms of reducing waste and promoting the biodiversity and the really healthy soils that we're looking for.
And then they make compost that you can buy like by the bucket. It's pretty cheap
yeah, it's way
to
cheap.
then put back into your garden.
It's a good resource. And the anaerobic digester also, that one you have to pay for specifically, but I think it's under $20 and they have an option for a small bucket or a large size bucket. They'll come and collect it and take it. Or if you don't have a place, like if you work or live in an apartment or something, you don't have a place that you can do a bucket like that. You can go to Anomalia and you can pay them, I think it's something like 80 cents a gallon per waste, or sorry, 80 cents per gallon for waste, and they will get it to the digester as well. So lots of options.
And then also I know in terms of the plastic baggies that like a bunch of food comes in, there are lots of companies that'll take those plastic baggies and properly recycle them. I know that REI takes like wrappers for like granola bars and stuff, the aluminum plastic. And I also know you can return your like once used plastic bags to certain Smiths as well. So there are also a lot of places you can dispose of things.
2 things on that. We also have, what is the group called? They're doing Flarn on campus. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Where they take the bags and they like cut them into rings. Yeah, and they're able to make mats that go out to unsheltered folks. And those mats save lives because we have people freeze to death all the time, and those mats are just enough insulation that they help keep people safe. So that's another way to do it. And also, Leo, do you want to plug for your project as well?
If you have any plastic and you're just looking to get rid of it, you can bring it to the sustainability office. We're using it to make eco bricks. So we take water bottles and we take all the plastic that you guys give us, and we're putting them into these, and we're gonna make a garden bed out.
I also want to note that Leo's being really modest in using the pronoun we. It's Leo. Leo.
Awesome. So yeah, a lot of solutions to discard all of your waste that comes with all the food bags. Are there any other questions on Zoom?
Yeah, we have another one. How can we influence the food supply and become safer by making it so harmful additives and preservatives are not in our food supply?
Yeah. Sure, do you want to address that first? I can't, okay, that is a really big question, and I think something that takes a lot of work from a lot of different angles. If you have the means to be able to purchase the things that are being sold that way, that's a great way to do it, right? The vote with your dollar as best as you can. That's something we have available to us. It's not perfect, but one thing you can do. And going to farmers markets and things like that, like Brooke said. If you know growers personally, or are able to develop a relationship with a grower, you can talk to them about why they make the choices they do and see if you can influence that. This is another problem that is awesome to throw lots of money at, right? Like a lot of people that we were just at a conference, Justin and I both were at a conference last week that was for Utah food and farming. And there are a lot of people that are still clinging to conventional growing methods. And it's just the way that they've done things for a really long time. And it feels like it's this big thing to overcome to make that switch, and it's really expensive. And so I think policy would be really helpful here, and supporting folks that are growing in alternate methods, and supporting with money where you can. And I don't know, grow your own food sometimes when you can, just stuff to add to that.
I was gonna say, like, with regards to like policy, getting involved with the Red Acre Center. They're a small farm advocacy organization in Utah. And right now they're doing a bunch of events up at the Capitol because it's the legislative session. So go to redacrecenter.org and check out what they're doing.
They're awesome. They come up from Cedar City to like preach on the Hill all the time and make change. They make a big change.
And they are farmers themselves too. So they know what they're talking about, which is cool.
So they're a good group to get involved with too. Yeah, and I think continuing education on this and educating farmers and people in the food system, but educating consumers as well. And also understanding that unfortunately this process moves slowly, and that doesn't mean we shouldn't keep working at it, right? And still celebrate all the incremental change we get. But it's a big, tricky issue. So doing what you can, and also not getting after anybody who makes different choices than you, right? Like organic foods are really expensive. And so we need to acknowledge that too, and acknowledge the financial barriers and work to dismantle those as well.
I think if I could also say something is to shop locally. Because even like the local farmers are not going to use the same preservatives and additives as
giant monoculture farms. And we have a lot of awesome local farms. Often seen.
Yeah, I have kind of a related question. So I also worked in agriculture for a long time and I kind of went the spectrum of conventional like corn, soybeans, that's what I grew up with, livestock. And then I also worked on small scale organic farms and like my college farm and stuff like that. And I feel like there's just a huge division within the agricultural community, the whole spectrum of political views of, you know, the kind of conventional to organic. And I feel like there's just a lot of, yeah, kind of division within that community. So I'm curious, especially Jess and Gabrielle, what your experience has been of that within the agricultural community and kind of food justice working within ag, I guess.
You would have loved the conference last week. That was-
Probably.
That was the theme. It was called
Yeah.
Rooted in Resilience, and multiple keynotes were addressing that. I'll let you speak. I've been talking a lot. Sorry, that's yours.
Yeah, I think just creating like a space for having that dialogue and for recognizing that people have those differences in their philosophy about farming methods. And then, yeah, I think just opening up the space to have discussion is really important. That's way easier to just like say out loud right now. But we did see it in action at the farm conference that was organized by Red Acre Center. Like it was like all sorts of like large scale ranchers, like local politicians, people from rural areas, people from up here in Salt Lake, like all coming together to talk about these issues and recognize where our common goals lie. Though our methods to reach those differ, like everyone there was concerned about water. Anyone who's growing food is concerned about water, regardless of in Utah, regardless of what methods you use. So talking about that together, like our goal is to have enough water for everyone for what they're doing. So like realizing what your common goal is and working towards meeting in the middle, not necessarily meeting in the middle, but yeah, just opening discussion for like different perspectives is really important and really difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's hard work, but it's good work.
Yeah.
Something we all need to be working on. And I think, I don't know, making space for it where you can, where you're able to have those conversations, where it's safe for you is really important. And making space for other people too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big thing to
Yeah.
tackle, right? But if we can all make the space in the best way we can, what I loved about the well, a lot of things I loved about the conference last week, but one thing I loved was that one of the talks that was given was on decentralizing the food system together. And it was by the person who runs the Red Acre Center. And she was like, I wanted to name this Decentralizing the Food System with Love. And I worried I would lose some people. And so she just kind of talked through it and had a lot of really good things to say. But her main thing was just what Jess encapsulated is we all have one goal, and it's to make sure we can all keep going and be okay and feed everybody. And that's where we can start. So, yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I live in university student apartments
Mhm.
and we have like a lot of land for like planting but we don't know really what to do with it because we just loan it out and then we can get some, but we don't know how to farm at all. So usually it goes like everything kind of dies at some point. I was just wondering like if you like could possibly help us with that.
I would like to. Yeah, so my understanding of that space is it's like community garden space for the people that live there, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe we could do like a workshop or something. I mean, folks can always come to volunteer hours, right? And I'll teach you there. Or you can go learn from Jess, right? But do you have access to leadership? Are you part of leadership with
No,
it?
I'm not, but I just thought.
Yeah, I think, let me give you my information, and if you want to advocate to them and say, hey, let's do some growing workshops, let's teach people how to grow food, I would be delighted to do that.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
yeah, happy to do it.
Any other questions? Okay, awesome. Okay, so we're coming on time. I think I just want to say, like, let's give our panel a huge round of applause. Thank you all so much for being here, for thinking about food justice, for supporting this full week of MLK events. There's still lots of food, so please, especially if you didn't get any, please grab some lunch, have a cookie, etc. We'll be hanging around. Make sure those of you who want to Gabrielle's contact in particular, that you get that so we can continue moving the conversation forward and learning. And just so grateful for all of you for being here. Thanks.